Hey guys, how's it going? Wanted to talk about uh, an interesting problem today in this politically divisive environment that we're in, that I see as uh, first some basic facts, and then also the explanations for why this might be, but most importantly, the implications of those facts. So let's start off with point one. Point one is that there is a growing divide of academics, professionals, and experts being aligned on one side of the political aisle versus the other. Now, it's very much the case that Democrat does not perfectly mean liberal, and that Republican does not perfectly mean conservative. Having said that, there is a strong correlation there, obviously. And there's no perfect way to measure exactly who is a liberal and who is a conservative. And so looking at whether someone is registered a Democrat or a Republican is often a good proxy that's used to measure that. With that knowledge, there's a study that I'm going to post in the comments of this video that shows the ratios of registered Democrats in academia, expertise, and professionalism versus those of Republicans. Um, to start, there is no field where Republicans have a stronger presence in academia and expertise than Democrats. None. The ratios by which Democrats outnumber Republicans do range substantially, but they are all significant. The lowest field, engineering, my own actually, is 1.6 to 1 Democrats to Republicans, meaning there are 60% more Democrat registered engineers than Republican registered engineers, which is huge. And this is the lowest ratio. The next lowest ratio is chemistry, sitting at 5.2 to 1, meaning there are 520% more Democrats than Republicans in the second lowest category, chemistry. Um, Throughout some of the sciences and economics, you see similar ratios: 5.5 to 1 for economics, 5.5 to 1 for professional, 5.6 to 1 for mathematics, 6.2 to 1 for physics, 6.3 to 1 for computer science. Where the ratios really start to increase in disparity are as you approach some things like social sciences, so psychology, religion, history. So these have ratios, for example, philosophy is 17.5 to 1. Religion is 70 to 1. Anthropology is 56 to 1. Communications is 108 to 1. Curiously, some of the harder sciences seem to rest higher. For example, biology is 20.8 to 1, and geoscience is 27 to 1. History sitting back with philosophy at about 17.4 to 1. Now, I want to reiterate what that means. 17.4 to 1 means that there are 1,740% more registered Democrats in professional history than there are registered Republicans. This is not even close. Registered Democrats dominate professionalism, academia, and expertise. Now, the second question is complex, and I don't claim to have solid answers, but I do have some hypotheses that have been supported by other literature, and that is why. Why do Democrats so obviously dominate academia and expertise? One of the possibilities, as expounded on in the book The Republican Brain by Chris Mooney, is that people that are liberal tend to be more open. When I say open, I don't necessarily mean open-minded. I more mean open as in interested in new experiences, uh, wanting to try new food, wanting to travel, wanting to listen to music that you're not necessarily familiar with. There is a strong correlation between openness and liberalism. To contrast that, there's a strong correlation between conscientiousness and conservatism. So it's not like, all of these attributes are all good liberal, bad conservative. It's not that simple. Nevertheless, openness is strongly associated with liberalism. So why does that affect academia? Two primary reasons. Number one, if you're more open, you're more likely to be interested in learning about new topics and expanding your knowledge on topics you're not familiar with. That's pretty much what motivates people to get into academia in the first place. So if liberals have a stronger propensity to want to learn about things that they don't know about, they can have a stronger propensity to be interested in academia. And the second thing, I've touched on this in a video before, is that humans do not reason well by themselves. They You lock a human either by themselves in a room or surround them with people that only believe what they believe, they come to terrible conclusions. I've expanded on this in another video that you can see on my channel if you want to learn more about that. But factually, we're really bad at coming to conclusions when we're thinking by ourselves or when we're thinking only with people that think exactly like us. When humans come to good conclusions, sound conclusions, complex and nuanced conclusions, is when we are surrounded by people that are relatively educated on the topic but disagree with us. So being surrounded by others helps us to come to more sound conclusions. Liberals are more open. Uh, they are thus more likely to have more diverse social circles. And this isn't just um, an extrapolation that I'm pulling from Chris Mooney. There are actually quite a few studies out there that show that liberals do, in fact, have circles that are more diverse in terms of religiosity, more diverse in terms of political spectrum, more diverse in terms of race. Liberals simply have more diverse social circles on average. That doesn't mean that Republicans don't have diverse social circles ever. It just means on average, Republicans and conservatives have significantly less diverse social circles. If you have more diverse social circles, you're more likely to invite um, thinking and perspectives that are not necessarily like your own, which will make your conclusions better based on the rationale that I expanded on in that other video. So these reasons are some of the reasons that might explain why Democrats are dominating professionalism, academia, and expertise so much. The last thing I want to talk on are the implications of this. Some of this is looking at current trends, and some of this is speculation. So I want to preface that by saying that I'm not looking into a crystal ball and predicting the future, nor do I claim to be. Some of the trends that we've been seeing is that there's a growing distrust in experts and science in general among the Republican Party and among conservatives. We've been seeing this since the Burkean Revolution of the 50s and 60s among conservatives, where they really are drifting further and further from science. And in the 50s and 60s, it was generally smaller things, often associated with religion, like denial of human evolution. But as we have progressed into modern decades, we're seeing it to a much greater degree. Things like denying man-made climate change or even the consensus on man-made climate change. Some conservatives don't even agree that virtually all scientists agree on that, which is an undeniable fact. They do. Um, Conservatives, to about the same degree as liberals, support the hypothesis that vaccines cause autism. We know that they don't. Conservatives are more likely to believe in things like conversion therapy, which we know doesn't work. Conservatives are more likely to believe in bogus science surrounding things like the pro-choice, pro-life debate. For example, thinking that the fetus can feel and experience pain at 8 to 16 weeks. We know for a fact that they can't. Conservatives are more likely to think that two homosexual parents can't raise children as successfully when all of the empirical literature shows that they stand the exact same chances of raising a successful child as two straight parents. Um, and some might counter, well, liberals have issues with science too, and that's true. They do. For example, liberals are more likely to disagree with the safety and efficacy of nuclear energy. Having said that, the percentages of liberals that disagree with nuclear energy are much smaller than the percentages of conservatives that deny things like climate change or the efficacy of homosexuals raising children. Oh, transgenderism is another one. The science non-debatably supports transgenderism being legitimate. It supports that transgenderism is a real thing. It supports the differentiation between sex and gender. It supports that these people are, by definition, not all plagued with some sort of mental deficiency or mental disorder. The science is 100% on the left side when it comes to transgenderism. So we see a very clear imbalance with respect to conservatives and liberals. Conservatives are more anti-science on average overall than liberals are, and seemingly increasingly so. So we have to ask ourselves, what is this leading to? And what I see it leading to, and I know this is the speculation part, is it's leading to a culture that is, to a large degree, dependent on denial of credible sources and factual evidence. When you reach a point that all of these topics are against your core ideology, you can either say, well, I'm still conservative, but I accept climate change and I accept that homosexuals can, raise children just fine and I accept transgenderism is totally legitimate. Or you can say, I'm not conservative, I guess. Or the third option that I see more and more people taking is you can say, I'm conservative and I deny those things. I deny that climate change is being caused by men. I deny that, homosexuals can raise children just as well. I deny transgenderism is legitimate because I deny expertise. I deny factual evidence. I deny peer-reviewed literature. I deny the data. I deny the facts that are laid at my feet. This will allow people to maintain their ideology, which I suppose is comforting, but it has really dangerous implications in terms of how people vote, in terms of how people make life decisions, in terms of what people support when it comes to the ballot. And we're seeing conservatives abandon reality at a quicker pace than liberals when it comes to hard scientific topics. And I think that this is fostering a culture that is beginning to ground itself in a denial of reality. Most of what I've laid out so far has either been extrapolation and speculation based on studies or direct reference to the facts and studies that we know about. What I'm about to say is more anecdotal simply because I see it in my own social circle, so to speak. When you have reached the point that you have justified denial of expertise, professionalism, uh, and largely denial of reality, denial of fact-based evidence, you can then start to essentially tell yourself that you can fabricate your own reality however you want it. I grew up with a certain individual that started off real strong by dropping out of high school, uh, and started some college, but dropped out of that pretty quickly too. Um, and here we are, 10, 11, 12 years after high school is finished, and he's literally done nothing with his life. He he lives in his mom's attic. I don't think he's ever paid a single full month's rent by himself. He has never had a meaningful job. He has barely held down, jobs like waiting tables or making sandwiches at Togo's for, I think, 6 or 7 months. I could be wrong on that. I haven't paid that much attention. He has a 4-year-old son that he's seen once for less than a couple of hours because his mom doesn't want him to be, the mom of the child doesn't want this individual to even be in this child's life because he's so immature and irresponsible, and because he's done nothing in a decade. Now, that's all sad. Where this is interesting and where this connects to my message is that if you listen to this guy talk, he thinks he's the greatest thing ever. He thinks he's ridiculously talented. He thinks that he's incredibly accomplished. He thinks that he's so far ahead of all of his peers that he uses that to justify that most of his friends are no longer friends with him because he thinks that he or he tells himself that he is He's that much more talented than them and that much more accomplished, and that anyone that went off and got a degree or a job plateaued. And that's the problem, right? Is that he's surrounded by this culture that fosters the belief that degrees are bad, expertise is bad, professionalism is bad, getting a job and learning about things and having true mastery is bad. He even has gone so far as to co-opt ideas that I used to talk about when we were young. For example, I had this one concept about how people tend to spiral up when they're successful, right? Success breeds success, failure breeds failure. Um, in that when you have become more successful, it's easier to become even more successful. When you have started to fail, it's easier to become um, even more of a failure, and that this is sort of a spiral pattern. He's co-opted it into this thing that he calls spiral energy, as if he came up with the idea. When I was the one that talked about it all through our childhood. Nonetheless, he really has convinced himself that this this life that he's created for himself, where he you know, you know talks about politics in which he's fundamentally misinformed and undereducated, where he makes music that is frankly subpar at best, um, and hasn't ever paid a month's rent and lives in his mom's attic, that this is success, that people that have jobs and degrees and true mastery over topics have plateaued, that he is he's somehow a pinnacle of accomplishment. And he is not the only person that I've seen following this path. I see a lot of people out there that don't have degrees, and that's not always a bad thing, right? You can have a promising career path without a degree, but it's much more likely that you won't. And a lot of these conservatives have very unpromising career paths that are making very little money. They're driving themselves into alcoholism and smoking cigarettes and looking at nothing productive in their future. But they tell themselves that these coastal elites and educated elites have somehow missed the mark that they have found. They have started to tell themselves that the reality that they live in is one where expertise and mastery and professionalism are not something that we should pursue. And that's dangerous because they're having children and they're voting and they're trying to push their version of culture towards the future of America, which would ultimately lead to America being far less successful, as we are grounded in our professionalism, in our expertise, in our knowledge, in our technology and innovation. That is what makes America great. And the conservative trends of modern day are explicitly fighting that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave them in the comments below. I'll link the study that I mentioned at the beginning. Thanks.